It's time for yet another Vampire Hunters free video. I told you guys to expect more of these once the update dropped. Now there's many guns to unlock in this game. Some are better than others, and some are a lot worse than others. Now, quite a few guns may have come to mind when I said that, but this video probably isn't about any of the guns that you thought of in your head. This video is about the guns that everybody forgets, collecting dust in the edit loadout menu to never be touched. This video is about the obscure guns of Vampire Hunters 3 and if they remain forgotten for a good reason and why they aren't widely used. Now, this video isn't about underrated or underpowered guns, and it isn't about guns that a lot of people are aware of but not everyone uses or has access to, like the Hefner series of guns. Now, just because a gun is obscure doesn't mean it doesn't exist in the rest of the VH3 player base. While collecting footage for this video or playing regularly, I've seen people using the guns I plan to cover in this video. And I'm also well aware that people have different ideas of what guns are obscure depending on their personal experiences. Some may even say that VH3 has no obscure guns. So try to remember that these are the guns that I think are obscure. Maybe I'd be able to provide a more accurate list if I could take a look into the brains of every last VH3 player, but I can't, not without arousing suspicion. So try to take that into consideration throughout this video. Now the main part of this video will be split up into 3 different sections using chapters for convenience's sake. Those being guns I don't think are that obscure but still worth mentioning, guns that I believe are actually obscure, and honorable mentions for guns that simply aren't obscure enough. I also don't take this video as me criticizing Zach or VH3 for the fact that these guns are obscure. I mean, there's much more to criticize the game for than some obscure guns. It's not their fault that a lot of the player base simply just forgets about these guns, and most of these guns are still pretty good or at the very least decently usable, though they're not all winners and some could really use some tweaks. Now let's actually begin with the first obscure gun of this video, that being the Mini. The Mini is quite a cheap, low-level gun, being unlocked at level 45 and costing about 10,000 credits. It's a small, fast-firing SMG that deals 13 damage and has the second highest fire rate out of any gun in the game, being at 1050 with its high recoil and low capacity working as a counterbalance. The base Mini's recoil, fire rate, and low mag size make it a real pain to use, but if you can control it, it's able to shred vampires quite decently. The silenced version of the Mini SD, actually has much more manageable recoil, and it's one of the few cases where I'd recommend the silenced version of the gun entirely. Now, why I think this gun isn't used is because despite its low level and cheap price, it's right next to the Nova X, which is currently the strongest shotgun in the game, and also since people are going to use the regular Mini first, they'll equip it, miss all of their shots because of the recoil, and then never use it again or never bother to get the silenced version, and as they level up and unlock cooler things, it just becomes a burning memory. I'm sure if you're half decent at video games, you can use this thing to turn vampires into dust, but I personally hate using the unsilenced version of this gun. Next is the M870 SAW. Now back in the pre-release versions, this thing had the highest damage per shot of all your pellets connected, and it was really low level, the same level as the BCH7, and I think it was a bit cheaper as well. As a drawback though, it had and still has quite unfavorable mag size and reload speed, so you'd spend a lot of time just waiting to fire your gun again. Come the V47 update and the shotgun nerf, this gun is now level 150 and deals less damage than the BCH7. It basically got nerfed into the ground, only having equip speed and fire rate to back it up while keeping its meager reload speed and mag size. I don't need to explain why I don't see this gun used often. It's high level and doo-doo. Its only saving grace is that it's cheap. I think by simply upping the damage to be a bit more than the BCH7 would be the right call here. Lastly for this section, the AK. The AK is the first and for quite a while was the only rifle in the game, and it's also one of 2 burst weapons in the game. It deals 16 damage per shot and shoots in 3-round bursts. It has pretty good recoil and fire rate too, with a somewhat small but still manageable mag size. This is a pretty good gun, but it feels like I never see anyone use it. It costs about 14,000 credits and is unlocked at level 150. I think the reason I don't really see this gun used much at all is simply because it's burst fire and nothing like an actual AK. At least nothing like the ones we all expect to see. Now into the guns I consider actually quite obscure, the first one being the Kriss Vector. The Kriss Vector is quite a popular gun and is seen quite often in most shooter games, and usually it's pretty good. But that's not really the case in Vampire Hunters 3. The Chris Victor has been in the game for a while and it costs 22,000 credits and is unlocked at level 150. It has the highest fire rate out of any gun in the game at about 1,200 and does 9 damage per shot, the second lowest out of any gun in the game. It has 22 bullets per mag and slightly below average recoil. The thing is, due to its high fire rate, you basically blow through the whole magazine in like a second. Also, by the time you unlock the Chris Victor, you have unlocked many much more powerful SMGs. Anyways, next up is the USG-3. The USG-3 is the second lowest level pistol in the game, of course being beaten by the P45, which is unlocked at level 0. The USG-3 is unlocked at level 30 and costs 4,000 credits. It deals about 18 damage per shot and has a pretty decent fire rate, a generous amount of ammo, and low recoil. It's a pretty decent gun, but new players are coming from the low recoil 21 damage decent mag size P45, so when they see the USG-3 with less damage and the lower recoil that they probably don't really even need, they'll obviously be turned off. And of course, as they level up, they'll unlock pistols like the RG or the Makarov and just forget about this gun, even if it's quite cheap. Also, since players gotta worry about buying abilities now, they'll probably want to save their monies for abilities or perks, so it's just gonna fade into more obscurity. Now for yet another SMG, the Evo A3. It's the closest this game has to a basic, regular assault rifle. It does 10 damage per shot, has 27 ammo in its magazine with around 980 RPM and somewhat above average recoil. It's unlocked at level 200 and costs 19,000 credits. It's a pretty decent gun, but sometimes its recoil can be a bit much, and by the time you unlock it, you'll have had guns like the SMP-5M at your disposal for a while now, and it's not really much better than the GK Auto since you get 1 more damage and slightly more mag size, but gotta deal with more recoil and you don't have a cool machine pistol anymore, so I see why people don't use this gun. By the way, speaking of machine pistols, the next gun is the 75Z, the only other machine pistol in the game currently. It's unlocked at level 175 and costs a bit over 17,000 credits. It deals 11 damage, has 950 RPM, 20 bullets per clip, and a fairly low recoil. It's kind of just the SMP-7S but a machine pistol and worse. It's really not that good at all. I can see why nobody uses this thing, it's pretty lame. Lastly, the AUG. The AUG is quite a recent gun, being added in V44, the update that adds ZAC Corp offices and the Chiroptera ability. It's most comparable to the AK since it's the only other burst weapon in the game and for quite a while was the only other rifle in the game. The AUG sets itself apart by having a slightly faster fire rate, better mag size, and firing 4-round bursts instead of 3-round bursts at the cost of having a bit less damage, though it's only less by like 2. The gun is unlocked at level 190, 20 more levels than the AK, and costs 7.4 thousand more credits. I think the reason this gun isn't widely used or talked about more often is because the AK, the AUG's more popular older brother, isn't even that widely used, and this gun is more expensive and unlocked later while not even having that much to sell itself apart from the AK. I don't think these two guns are in need of a crazy buff or anything, but they should make the AUG the same level in price as the AK so that there's more reason to actually buy this thing. As it stands, most people will probably just buy the AK and save the AUG for when they buy everything for completionist sake before proceeding to never really use it. Now, with all of the obscure guns done, it's time for the honorable mention. First, the M45A1. I was considering this, but it's more so in the middle ground of popular and what the fuck is this thing? It's a pretty decent gun, but you're better off just going for the D15, Makarov, or RG, since they all provide more damage while only nerfing the rest of the stats a little or less damage in exchange for way better literally everything else. Next, the MP41. I never really thought this gun was that obscure, but for a tiny bit I was considering it, but then I realized that it just wasn't. It's quite a decent gun, it doesn't have much recoil. Buy it if you can. The SMP-7 was also another gun I was considering, but it just barely couldn't escape honorable mention, so here it is. It's really just a worse SMP-5M, as the extra 100 fire rate is cancelled out by the plethora of other downsides. Speaking of the SMP-5M, the SMP-5M is not obscure whatsoever, and has no place in this video. The M020 is just another gun that was shy of being considered obscure, but of course it's in here. It's a pretty good semi-auto shotgun, even though there's only like 2 fast-firing semi-auto shotguns in the game, the only other one being the S12K. I was considering the 92X2 as well, but it's just like, they're dual pistols. There's just no way. Lastly, the P90. I haven't seen this gun used or talked about, but when looking at its overall stats and its price, I just assume that the only reason I haven't seen it or heard of it much is just because I happen to not be paying attention to the community or what the hunters are using, and that's not actually obscure. And that's it for honorable mentions, and by extension this whole video too. In a game like Vampire Hunters 3, it's a simple inevitability that some guns would be forgotten by the player base for various reasons. That's not really Zach's fault, and I don't really have anything to drag out the outro with, so crap. What do YouTubers do when they need to drag out a video? Oh well, who cares, cue the outro.